Hi, hello, and how are you? That's right. That sexy Rockwell piece says it's time. It's time to get coached up with another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. So come on in and stay a while. That's right. I'm a proud sponsor of the Rockwell brand and proud brand ambassador. Go to rockwelltime.com to receive 20% off of anything on that website. Use the promo code Coach20. Like and follow the Coach Scott Field Show on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that little bell when our guests come on for those notifications. If you're watching us on DBTV Monday through Fridays, I say thank you, as we have an opportunity to be seen in over 300 million households around the globe. If you're watching us on CSTV Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock, I appreciate you. Or out of Chicago, the Rewind Sports 60, where this man won 3 NBA championships. Without further ado, Scottie, welcome and thrilled to have you as a guest on the Coach Scott Field Show. I know you're busy promoting the book around the country.
Well, thank you very much, Coach. I appreciate you making some time for me. Yeah, this has been a kind of a new experience for the old jock and me. Never thought about writing a book or anything like that, and certainly don't know how to promote one very well. But I had a blast doing it. Kind of things started during the pandemic when we had no sports, and Michael Jordan released his 10-part documentary, The Last Dance. And I got an opportunity to be on some phone calls and some podcasts with some of my former teammates and telling stories. And I started putting some of them on Facebook. And a couple of people say, "Hey, dude, you should do a biography. We love, reading about your stories." And I said, "Well, I don't know the first thing about being an author. I can't even spell it." So I happened to stance a guy named Ben Guest was writing a book, and he needed some help with his. And I said, "Well, if you help me with mine, I'll help you with yours." And we formed a nice little partnership and a bond. And it took a little longer than I wanted to. I wanted to get it out for the '92 playoffs last year, and didn't quite make it. So it was kind of hard to write at times. I get real, I get raw. You said you read it, so it's all out there. It's not some sensationalism tell all, or I'm telling stories about my teammates I've played with. I talk about a lot of them, mostly in a positive way, but it's mostly about my childhood growing up, some of the adversity I had to be dealt with.
You know what? And Scottie, I can appreciate it, because to me, I read the book, as you can see on the shelf behind me. I've had several NBA guys come on that have, shared their stories. But what I liked about yours, and thank you for sharing yours with me. I mean, it was real. It was authentic. It was very heartfelt and emotional. And the fact that you were able to be so vulnerable to tell some of those traumatic stories of your childhood and upbringing. I think there's a lot of people that around the globe that when they read this, yeah, we see you, winning 3 championships and having a 15-year NBA career. But to truly connect with Scott Williams and some things that you've gone through and had to endure was very powerful and very impactful, my friend.
Well, thank you. And I think that's the reason why I took a little longer to get it out. There was times when I was writing this and it was very traumatic. It wasn't always easy to write, and I'd have to get away from it for a while. I didn't want to write during the holidays. You want to be festive and joyous and celebrate with friends and family and merriment and the new year. And it's dark when you start talking about Coach Smith knocking on your door early one morning and delivering the news that your father shot your mother and then killed himself. I mean, I had a lot of dark days. Those memories start flooding back to you, and drinking in my dorm room and wondering, why I was, spared, and why can I carry on? Do I want to quit basketball? Do I want to go back to California, be closer to more family? And I sat in that dorm room and hit the beers kind of hard, hit the ball a little bit. And I thought, there's so much now that these kids have to deal with, on not only just in high school, but especially in college. I'm hearing more and more about people being where I was, and they don't always find a way out and end up taking their lives. And if I can reach somebody and let them know that I've been there, I've done that, I know those feelings of emptiness and loneliness, it's worth it for me. If I can affect just one life, I'm not saying I'm going to save a life. I'm not naive enough to think that, be that, proud of myself or into myself to say that. But if I can affect one life and get somebody to maybe reach out to a coach, maybe reach out to a teacher, somebody that they trust in the community, that's huge. Because a lot of times when I was going through, it's a shameful thing when you're dealing with a lot of verbal and physical abuse in the house growing up, and your father, someone that's supposed to love you, telling you how, what a terrible person you are calling you dumb, or all the things, the negative verbal abuse and the physical abuse that he gave to me, my brother, or my mother. That's not an easy thing to overcome.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know that there are ways, there are people out there that they can talk to. And sometimes social media is not easy. And I was nervous at 55 years old to talk about some of these things because of the Twitter trolls, right? It's like, and then at the end of the day, I go, your mama raised you better than that. Coach Smith taught you better than that. She didn't raise no sissies. She didn't raise no, punks to be afraid of somebody talking about, because you got real and I got raw. I talked about how I wet the bed till I was 18 years old in the book. I tell anybody that before, Scott.
Yeah.
So it was something that I wanted, but I want to be able to be real and be connect to people that are having difficulties like I experienced, like my brother experienced, and certainly the loss of my mother. And I'm glad I finished it. I'm glad I didn't stick it in the drawer. There's times I was going to stick it in a safe deposit box and, leave a key with my kids when I passed. Like, here, this is what your daddy went through. But again, my mother raised me better than that. So
Yeah.
I did it as an honor to honor her legacy, what she sacrificed for me and my brother growing up. I partnered with 2 domestic violence centers, one here in Phoenix, where I currently live, and one in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where Coach Smith spent so much of his time, and a special place that meant a lot to him and to me as well. So I had my first book signing on Saturday. I was nervous as all get out for it. And I tell you what, I just really appreciate the people of North Carolina and the city of Chapel Hill that really rallied to support a good cause. The Compass Center, I signed autographs as fast as I could, nonstop for 3 hours, and I think we did some good. So, and I also want to shout out to the Chapel Hill Sportswear. They partnered with me, did it in their place. They put 10% of all their sales and merchandise that day to the Compass Center as well. So,
Wow.
it was a huge success, and I'm looking forward to trying to do that again.
Yeah, Scottie, I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm a true believer that someone's test can truly be a testimony. And the fact that you put it out there so raw and so openly, like you said, you were guarded with it for years, but mental health now is so important. And, for people to read and see that someone like you had to endure such a thing, and I'm calling it enduring, that's a superpower, because a lot of people succumb to that. And the fact that you were brave enough, courageous enough to do that, I think is a wonderful tool for anyone's toolbox. Please hold up the book. I mean, let's talk about it. Through the Fire. Where can the viewers of this show, where can they find the book?
Yeah, Scott, I think, first of all, let me just go back before. Yes, Through the Fire, a memoir of trauma, loss, basketball, and triumph, because it wasn't all rainbows and puppies for me to get to the NBA. And it looked kind of like that from the outside. I wasn't an inner city kid. I grew up in a upper middle class suburban home, 3-car garage, 2-story house, swimming pool and jacuzzi in the backyard, a fire pit, and a hoop over the driveway. So everything from the exterior looked really good. It was the drama, the terror inside the house of my father was the tough thing. But Coach Smith, he had 3 things on the practice plan that everybody had to remember. It was an offensive emphasis. It could be make the extra pass on offense. Defensive emphasis might be sprint back or box your man out. But the thought for the day had nothing to do with basketball. It came from all different people in walks of life, politicians, musicians, pop culture stars. And one of the ones that was kind of a reoccurring theme over my 4 years there was, it's never too late to do the right thing. And here I am at 55 years old. And this happened to me when I was 19. I was a young 19. And I finally reached the point where I could speak about it, write about it, and be truthful about it. And I know that this book might find its way into some young man or some young girl or woman that might need to hear that and take a little solace from that. So I've started a website and contact me on that, Through the Fire Book One at gmail.com. You can find the book on Amazon.com. It comes in Kindle, paperback, and hardback, hardcover. And also on Barnes & Noble for my loyal Barnes & Noble's followers out there as well. So trying to do some good and give something back to the domestic violence centers. The one here in Phoenix is called Chrysalis, and they both not only help people with financial abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, but also their children. They actually shelter women that are in violent situations and need to get someplace safely quickly. So I'm very proud to be partners with them.
Wow, that's, Scottie, again, that's just so empowering to know that that's out there. And I hope that this show and this platform and word of mouth will help market and promote this book, especially knowing that, we're big throughout the country and around the globe. So again, if you don't mind holding up that book for me to show everybody, Through the Fire here.
Yeah,
Scottie,
Through the Fire, Memoir of Trauma, Loss, Basketball, and Triumph. If you can't remember that, just remember Scott Williams' book on Amazon. In your search bar, it'll pop right up. Number 2 right now in the pop-up. So
congratulations.
Not bad for a guy who doesn't know what the heck he's doing. But I've been fortunate. A lot of readers have connected with it. I've had people that I went to high school with and from elementary school had no idea what was going on. Had my old high school coach open up and share some things with me. I'm sure he's never shared with people before, and total strangers as well. So people are connected to it. They said that they either were me or they witnessed a lot of the things that I had to witness. So we're not alone. And I think that's the biggest thing that I hope to accomplish by raising some awareness to the situation of domestic violence. 20 people every minute in the United States are affected in some way by domestic violence. And Scott, our coach feels, I just think that number is just way too high. And I'd like to bring some awareness to that and see if we can't try to do some ability to reduce that, or at least find comfort for those that are affected.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, again, here we're with the Coach Scott Field Show. We got Scott Williams on here. Most of you through our platform, because professional basketball is kind of what connects us. But to know this young man's journey, I'm still calling you a young man because I'm the same age as you. So I'm definitely calling you young. We're both follically challenged. But I'll tell you what, the fact that, you're able to share this experience, and I can't imagine the triggers you felt as you were trying to open that back up and share those heartfelt stories, and the fact that, how you eloquently put in that, Coach Dean is knocking on your door and he's the one that brought the information to you about the tragic event. I just can't imagine being a 19-year-old man living across the country to have that news delivered to you, and what that did to your heart and to your soul to know that you found out later that your mom was basically protecting you and your siblings.
Yeah, my brother and I, she always said she wanted to make sure she got us out of the house before she left.
Wow.
And my brother was 3 years older, and I always wanted to go to UCLA, which is about 45 minutes from where I grew up in California. And when Coach Smith came to visit, he was very crafty because he invited my mother to come on the official visit with me. No other coach had done that. And she got out there and fell in love with the campus. But I think the more important thing is she fell in love with Coach Smith. He knew that this man had more value on me getting an education, becoming a better person, than he ever cared about winning and losing basketball games. So, she made him promise that, I send my baby across town, you're going to protect me. I don't know if Coach Smith realized what he was getting into at the time, but true to his word, when I talked to him about sitting out as I wasn't sleeping many nights, I was hitting the beers hard, and I had very little energy for practice. And Coach Smith wouldn't take it easy on me at all. He could tell that he needed to work me, and that became my therapy. The sessions on the court, having a lock in on what he was trying to teach, banging with my brothers, J.R. Reed and Pete Chilcutt and Marty Hensley down low, and Jeff Levo, Steve Bucknell, George Lynch, Ranzino Smith. I can go on and on. Those guys probably didn't realize at the time how much I appreciated being on the floor banging and could let loose and get out some of my frustrations. But it was therapeutic for me. I tried to see a psychologist at one point, as Dr. Linnea Smith, Coach Smith's wife, had suggested a couple of times. And I'm not knocking that at all. But for me, being with my teammates, going and grab a burger up on Franklin Street or getting a pizza, staying up late night, getting a bucket of bones at timeout because we couldn't afford the actual chicken sandwich.
That's right.
That type of thing meant a lot to me. It meant less nights in that dormitory room by myself when those evil thoughts started to creep in. So those times on the floor and hanging with my teammates were crucial to me getting through. And Coach Smith was there for me, and he wouldn't let me sit the year out. And he never really told me why, but I guess years later I kind of figured it out. He wanted me close by. He knew the discipline probably was the best thing for me. It helped me stay focused and get to class. He monitored that real well too, maybe a little more than I wanted, because a couple mornings why at 7 a.m. I had to miss some courses. He made me run from the Smith Center to the golf course and back. Or slapped that weighted vest on me and made me run the stadium stairs, which was never real fun. And Coach Williams too. He was there for me too. He was the big man's coach, and Coach Smith wouldn't let him coach much at all during practice. But I think Coach Smith told him to wear me and JR or Pete and Marty Hensley out, because he'd get us 45 minutes before practice even started, and we'd be dog tired by the time Coach Smith even got his hands on it. So all of that I really appreciated, from Coach Williams to Coach Smith to Coach Guthridge, and even now Coach Hubert Davis, who was a teammate of mine, was 2 years behind me, and we used to knock him down all the time thinking, oh, this guy can't play. He just Walter Davis's little nephew. But he was tough, man. He was resilient. He'd bounce up off that floor ready for the next play. And we realized real quickly he could help us. And he went on to have a great professional career in broadcasting and coaching. I'm just so proud of what he's done at the University of North Carolina.
Oh, man, Scott, I get chills hearing you passionately share that, because there was definitely a purpose to that. And to hear that, the basketball court was your sanctuary, your safe place, but that brotherhood with your teammates. I mean, that's what sports are all about. I mean, championships are wonderful. I've been blessed to have traveled the globe and won multiple championships myself, but the relationships that you build, that brotherhood and that camaraderie when you step away from the game after it's time to hang the sneakers up, that's what we truly miss, that connectivity 100%. And to have your buddies challenge you, push you, hold you accountable, and yet, make each other better versions of yourself. Man, that's what I hear, that Tar Heel culture was all about.
100%. Coach Smith started it. And it carried right on through to Coach Davis now. I was just back on the Hill. I got a chance to visit the basketball office, got a new tour of the office. Wow, we have come a long way to Smith Center. These players are spoiled, in my opinion, if you ask me. But it's great to see what they do and they provide for them. Got a chance to go to the Carolina Basketball Museum, which is right next door. And I got to say, I'm not quite represented in there enough. I got to talk to somebody about that. But no, it was beautiful. I went over to the women's basketball offices over at Carmichael and dropped 20 copies of the book off for them as well, because 1 in 3 women will be affected in some way by domestic violence. Maybe not directly, but in some way they may have a sister or a cousin or somebody they know will be affected, and that's just far too high a percentage right there. But the most important thing, you touched on it, the Carolina family, as we like to call it. They call it the Brotherhood 7 miles down the road at that 4-letter school. But we call it the Carolina family, and it's so true. At my signing, Jeff Denny, my old college teammate and roommate, showed up, throwing people in the store to buy books to get them to support the Domestic Violence Center. Pete Chilcutt NBA champion, came back doing the same thing, signing autographs and taking pictures. Michael Norwood was there, got to play. He was only played with him for 1 year. He was a senior when I was a freshman. He came back. So it's just so great to have that sign of support in a situation that was, uncomfortable for me. You want to talk about going out and playing game 6 of the 93 NBA finals, you're in your 15 down, the coach throws you out there with 4 of your bench buddies. No problem. Right. We've drilled on that. We practiced that. We brought them back to 3. Then they brought it the magic weapon back in there, scored 12.
The black cat. Bring the black cat back in.
It was like, okay, well, we did what we're supposed to do. Let MJ take over and get all the credit now. But those things are comfortable for me. That book signing, man, I didn't sleep the night before. My palms were sweaty all morning. I could barely get down 2 eggs. And to see my Carolina family rally and support me like that was huge.
Man, I love hearing that. You shared some of those stories in the book. You talked about Scottie Pippen saying, "Hey, Tank," and he hands you the trophy and you hold up that trophy. And I love how you put that in there. But something else I want to come back to. Earlier, you talked about teachers in the community and coaches. I also love the shout outs that you gave to the coaches and teachers and people who, helped you and provided you with skills along the way as you were, going through the ranks. And I think that's a great touch. But another thing I want to touch on in the book, you talked about that $200. Share with the viewers of the show about that $200 with Coach Smith.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in frame, but I got it framed right behind me. It's over that shoulder there. If it shows up on camera,
okay.
Bottle glasses on. I can't hardly even see myself in my monitor here. But I can't shoot 18-footer anymore like I used to from the baseline. I can't. The rim's a little too fuzzy these days. I got to pound my son down low if I'm still going to beat him.
Take it to Ben, boy. Get out of here.
But yeah, I mean that's the love Coach Smith had for all of his players, right? So every varsity player that played for Coach Smith got a nice letter from him saying what we meant to him. It wasn't just my story being the only one. It was everybody had a fatherly connection to Coach Smith, regardless of whether or not you went on to play in the NBA, or in my case, what Coach Smith wrote in his books, having to deliver the hardest situation he ever had in college basketball was walk into my dorm room, he said, and tell me that what had happened. So that check was meant for us to go out and grab a steak dinner, maybe a bottle of wine, and have a meal on Coach Smith. So even as he was leaving us, he left us with something, and far more than $200, I'd say. The life lessons that he taught us, the way he pushed us to be better than we thought was possible. It definitely is something that made me overcome my situation, gave me the support and confidence to get my college degree in communications. And when I wasn't drafted, not to realize that wasn't the end for me, and that I faced worse challenges. All I needed was an opportunity. So, those are the kind of things that I remember about Coach Smith. We recently celebrated mourned or celebrated, however you want to recognize the 8 years of his death about 6 weeks back. And they had the Dean E. Smith Basketball Writers Coaches Awards in Greensboro had been back in North Carolina for the first time in 8 years. And Tubby Smith and Bob McKellips from Davidson as co-recipients this year. So again, Carolina family showed up. We got a table for 12. Got on the Highway 40 and rode from Chapel Hill together, all down there and represented. And I wanted to just a quick shout out to Coach Smith and Coach McKellips, because both dynamic individuals, and they talked so highly of Coach Smith. It made our hearts soar to hear them speak about how they built their programs on a lot of things that Coach Smith had taught, and recognized us as being there to represent Coach Smith. Was a very classy move by both those gentlemen. You ever get a chance, Coach, to hear them speak? The opportunity. They make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when they address a room.
That's right. They do a fantastic job, and I know both of those guys, and they've had great careers themselves. But to hear how other coaches impact other coaches, and all of us coaches, we're a tight fraternity, and we're pirates. We steal from each other, and what works for them, and how does that work? And you got to coach a while yourself, and you've been a broadcaster, so and understand. How our industry works. So, to have guys like that, just share their heartfelt sentiments are always powerful. You mentioned, you know, being undrafted and being in that North Carolina program and probably those, hour workouts with Coach Roy Williams with the weighted vest and having a Dean Smith push and challenge you every day. How did that help prepare you mentally, physically, spiritually after going through a tragedy like you had gone through to be undrafted and yet still have an opportunity to have a successful NBA career? What were those lessons that he taught you, discipline, perseverance? I mean, share with our viewers those things.
Yeah, tenacity. Coach Smith, I think sometimes for all the great things that are said about him, I think one thing that I don't hear shared enough is how competitive he was. And I think that's what I got from him in a lot of the coaching situations, whether it be in the chalk talks. I'm not sure if we even had a whiteboard back then. We may had,
Yeah.
but I do remember that how competitive he was in situations. When we lost to Duke 3 times in 1988 and met them in the ACC finals in '89, he was a smoldering dragon wanting to get that win. And we always knew him to be competitive. We went 14-0 in the ACC my freshman year. And I remember those last couple games, how hard he pushed us in practice to get that perfect record in the regular season. We had the #1 team in the country. But that taught me when I wasn't drafted that I was going to have that same sort of mentality. When I wrote down every player's name, what team drafted them, and I kept that in my locker room for many, many years because I said I was going to play longer than all these dudes. And it motivated me to work, to try to fit in, to try to be professional, to try to do all the things in the community service, media relations, that I could make myself available to be a professional. I was lucky to be in the Bulls with Paxson and Craig Hodges and Bill Cartwright, of course, Michael Jordan. But those guys taught me how to be a pro, not just winning championships. They taught me what it was like to be a true pro. So I was an asset to all the teams that I played for after that, and especially towards the end when I was on fumes.
Yeah.
I was good in the locker room. I could get guys to buy into playing well together. I could coach up the young guys, Michael Redd and Mari Stoudemire and Nazi Muhammad. I like to say that I had a good part in them learning what it was like to be a pro, to go on and have successful, long NBA careers. And that became a value to young teams. The only reason I played with LeBron James my final year in the league is they had poor chemistry in their locker room. We had a Jeff McGinnis, a Carolina guy. Sorry, Jeff. Wasn't getting along real well with some of the other dudes, and they brought me in to kind of help be a professional around a talented young player like LeBron James. I'm not going to take credit for him being the NBA's all-time leading scorer. I didn't see that coming, Coach.
Yeah.
But I knew at an early age this kid had a lot of tenacity, willpower. I mean, he was the closest person of all the Hall of Famers that I played with: Steve Nash and Scottie Pippen, Dirk Nowitzki, Allen Iverson. He was the closest one that I saw have a different twinkle, a different energy, a different level like Michael Jordan had when it came to anything it had to do with preparing to step foot on that court. And I'm not taking anything away from the other dudes, but LeBron James and Michael Jordan have an it factor I hadn't seen any other Hall of Famers that I came across during my travels over 15 years. And Coach, wouldn't you know, and all those dudes that got drafted before me, and it was the first year that the draft was 2 rounds in 1990, but I played longer than all those guys except for one. And I'll give you a hint. He's the only Hall of Famer from that class of 1990. Played at Oregon State.
Ooh, Gary Payton.
The glove, Gary Payton. That sucker just kept on ticking on. He ended up going to play 17 years. After 15 years and play, I realized I was done. I was older than LeBron's mom. I said, there's got to be a rule. If you're older than your teammates' parents, you get your pension immediately. So I talked to the coach and said, you can send me on home now. I think I'm done.
And with my research, I saw with that Cleveland Cavalier roster, you were the only player that was born in the 1960s. So as Cartright was your teach, you became the teach, and then you got to pass on the torch, brother.
Yeah, Anderson Varejão was this young kid out of Brazil. I think he was 15 years old. He was nothing but a ball of hair and energy. And they had me trying to start in front of this guy. I think that lasted about a day and a half. And I knew this kid was better, stronger, faster, and more talented than I was at this point. So all I could do was try to pass on the know-how.
I love it. And you were mentioning before, talking about, B.J. Anderson and Bobby Hansen and Stacey King, Craig Hodges. I mean, that was the group that you were put on the floor with when they pulled the starters out with Phil Jackson. But you have also been able to been around some great basketball minds, not just the Coach Roy Williams or the Coach Dean Smiths, but I mean, you had Coach Paul Silas. I mean, Phil Jackson, come on, 11 rings, Gorge Karl, Dan Issel, Frank Justin. I mean, the basketball minds that you were able to learn from and the players in the locker rooms that you were with, what a wealth of knowledge and expertise that you have in your repertoire because of those, wonderful 15 years of service you provided.
Yeah, Del Harris.
Del Harris is class act, man. Wow.
Really is. Tex Winter, who wasn't a head coach, but
Tex is my guy. Oh, I miss him.
Yeah, the triangle offense, so successful for the Chicago Bulls. Johnny Bach, an assistant coach. I think he was master defensively, put Horace, Scottie, myself in a lot of good positions to maximize our talents by minimizing our weaknesses. So I owe a lot of credit to all of my coaches' staff. There's only a couple that, said, hey, they had their style. Williams, you go out there and play my style. And it didn't work. And I didn't look very good in their systems. But for the most part, during my 15-year career, I was very fortunate to have started with Phil Jackson. He was probably the closest to Coach Smith on the way he approached the game from a cerebral side. And I was lucky because Coach Smith didn't just roll balls out for all Americans. He really taught us a lot about the X's and O's. And before basketball IQ was a term that we throw around very easily now. He taught us all of those things: time and score and situations and trends and players' tendencies. We were always so well prepared. So when I got to Chicago, the triangle offense was something new. No one had seen it. The Bulls tried running a little bit the year before, and it wasn't real successful. The players weren't used to that at the pro level. But I was coming in as a blank slate. And I had some contact with one of my old assistant coaches, Jim Cleamons, yesterday. We were texting.
Coach Clem, that's my guy.
I'm trying to put a book in his hand, trying to get an address from him. He's like, I don't have this number on my phone. Who is this? I'm like, come on, coach. You once said I learned the triangle offense faster than any other Chicago Bull. So then he started smiling and laughing. He said, you haven't lost track. You can sense we were coaching together in Milwaukee. So I was very fortunate. I picked up on that triangle real quickly. And I think it was the reason there was one spot left out of the 7 guys trying out. That's the reason why I got that spot. The things that Coach Smith taught me and how quickly I could be able to pick up the triangle, go home, or not go home, go back to the little cheap motel off the side of the highway. They put all the free agents out that were trying to make the ball club, and I would just write down what I did well, where I made mistakes. All the terminology was solely different. Weak side fill, blind pig. All those types of things, and I was just a little quicker to pick it up. I was not out of position. I was not hesitating, And I think it was an asset to the team right from the very beginning. So it helped me get that final spot.
See, I love hearing you describe the attention to detail because all those little things matter. And we as coaches, what you don't correct, you accept. And when you mentioned Tex Winter and I became very good friends. As you said, the innovator of the triangle offense. Got a great Tex Winter story for you. May he rest in peace.
I got one for you too that I had to leave out. I had to leave out of the book.
So I'm going to share this one. Tex and I used to spend a lot of time together, and he gave me copies of the triangle, and we would go to lunches, and we were spending time at the NBA Summer League together. And of course, just sharing knowledge all the time. And loved one time we're getting up and it's halftime of one of the NBA Summer League games, and we're walking towards the bathroom, and we're going to the door, and we walk there together, and he looks over at me. He goes, "Good prostate before bad prostate." He goes, "My 800 jump ropes tired me out." He goes, "Open that door for me."
Yeah, that sounds about like Tex for sure.
I love that man with all that he was, and Coach Cleamons has been a guest on the show, so all great buddies. But would love to hear your Tex story, if you could share.
Okay, well, well, listen, I did mention I was undrafted. I did mention I was quite competitive, and what I didn't mention is I carried 2 chips on my shoulder for not being drafted. I think the size of Volkswagens. And one thing I realized early on in the NBA is that some guys don't want to practice hard after they've played, 3 games in 4 nights or 4 games in 5 nights. And I wasn't getting many minutes. So I needed the practice reps, like game reps, to be ready for the action that I get. If it was 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was, I needed to be sharp at game speed. So I learned kind of how I needed to press on the buttons of my teammates when they were tired to get them to play a little harder against me. So Cartwright, I used to just give him a cheap shot, and that would fire him up. A cheap shot, and he didn't like getting hit. He had bad hips. So he did not like getting, a knee or an elbow or a forearm around his lower back area, hip area, and then he'd start play harder for me. Well, Horace Grant, he went to Clemson, I went to North Carolina. So for me, with him, it was just always talking a lot of trash, and I needed Horace to play a little harder one day when he was dogging it, and so I started talking a lot of trash to him. So he started talking trash back. And we were banging and getting physical. I'm like, okay, this is what we need. Well, one time the whistle blew and Tex wanted to correct the point. Like you say, if you don't correct it, it becomes a bad habit, right? But I didn't hear Tex start talking. And I'm talking trash to Horace down underneath the basket. And Tex was out towards, a half court. And Tex come up to me with his fist balled up, like he was ready to swing on me. And he said, "You want to be a player or a horse's ass?" And I took a step back. And I said, I'm not going to take a second step. And I hope somebody gets to him before he gets to me, because I don't know what's going to happen. If I got to try to fight this old man, I'm certainly going to get cut from this damn team. But I ain't going to let him swing on me and not protect myself. So thank God, Phil Jackson came out of my blind side and spun me around and said, "You get out of here right now." And I was like, "Coach, I ain't leaving the court." I said, "I'll get off the floor." But I knew if I left that court, and we practiced at a health club, if I left that health club, they were going to cut my butt. So I said, I'm going to stand on the sideline until things calm down, but I ain't leaving the floor.
Oh, great story.
I thought Tex was going to fight me. I'm like, "Tex, I'm 22 years old. You really going to walk up on me like you want to swing on me?" But that was Tex Winter. That's how feisty he was, man. He had a point he needed to make, and I was messing around and talking over him. And he didn't like that at all.
Hey, there was no back down in that man from the get-go, right?
That's right.
Good stuff. Well, let's share some stories of those Chicago Bull days, because I know people just can't get enough of it. I mean, they watch YouTube videos with this younger generation. They saw The Last Dance. I mean, you had to compete against the Black Cat, all those years. What were some of the things that stood out that you didn't see in The Last Dance that still resonate in your mind as how competitive he was and how he pushed and challenged all the players?
Well, two things, three things really. The first, and I'm going to go through these quickly. The first one was when I got to Chicago, they hadn't won a championship. They'd been getting manhandled by the Detroit Pistons. And all I heard the day before practice, or all heard was, we got to have the best record in the East so we can get by the Detroit Pistons, because we don't believe, or at least the coaching staff didn't believe, they can win a Game 7 at the new Auburn Hills, the Palace at Auburn Hills. They had gotten beat pretty bad in Game 7 the year before. So that's what they were all hell-bent on. And Michael Jordan was an absolute beast in training camp. We practiced long hours in the morning, had a little break in the afternoon, and came back and went deep into the evening for 7 straight days. Not like the day where you have to have like a non-contact practice at one time during the day, and there's a time limit. It was, he had the whole Pat Riley approach. Like, we're going to go and we're going to drill and we're going to stay on this floor till we get it right. And he was trying to really get that triangle across home, getting guys used to read and react. I mean, it's got like 50 different moving parts to it. It's like a chess board spread out over Maplewood, and it just doesn't work if guys aren't in sync and the timing doesn't work to perfection. So it just looks like crap. And sometimes it did, and then we just get the ball to 23 and get the hell out of his way. But
there's no I in team, but there is in win.
That's right. But Jordan was hell bent on beating the Pistons and getting to the NBA Finals, and they put a guy named Dennis Hopson in front of MJ every day. And to this day, it's the saddest thing I ever saw in sports, because Michael had no chill, and he got in Hop's face, and he got physical, and he talked trash, and he would say, "Dennis, you're not getting nothing today." He'd block his shot. He'd bow him in the mouth. He'd do all these things to Hop, and Hop just wasn't that physical player. And Hop led the nation in scoring at Ohio State, 30 points a year the year before, his senior year. He averaged 16 and a half points for 4 years in the NBA with the New Jersey Nets before he came over that year. But by the end of that season, Michael had beat him down so badly every day, because we didn't mix up the teams. It was starters versus subs, and we could never beat them, because we just couldn't get Hop to go back at MJ, except for one day. One day it had enough, and got physical with him, chest to chest, took it to the whole straw, knocking MJ around, and we beat the starters. And we thought, this is it. This is the start of something great. We're going to be able to compete with the starters now. But then it was right back to the next day. MJ was right back in his grill, right? Just manhandle him again. But that's all he needed. That was the saddest thing I ever saw, because they had to trade Hop a few games into the next year, because he just never recovered from that. He lasted a few more years in the league, and then he was out of the league, unfortunately. But Michael, it wasn't personal for Michael. It just didn't know how to give Hop a moment, just to let him gain a little confidence. I always feel sorry for Dennis Hopson.
It's a great story, because he did have a great career in the Big Ten there with Ohio State, like you mentioned, and had great serviceable years. But I can't imagine.
I know that, because the second year, Michael wanted to work on his low post game, and he pulled me after practice. I'm like, I'm down. I need the extra reps. So he'd pull me after practice. We played a lot of one-on-one. I probably played more one-on-one with him than his brothers did. I mean, except for his brothers. My time in Chicago, and I never ever got a win, except I hit one game winner one time. He says I traveled, and this day I know I didn't travel, and I had him down, and he came back, and I had him down by 3 scores, and he came back and beat me. But I'm going to hold that one as a win, because I know for a fact I did not travel when I made that bucket. So MJ, I did get one victory.
Hey, there's again talking about that Carolina connection and family and being so competitive. I'm sure he loved to have you with your size and your physicality to help him with that, fadeaway jumper or, whatever footwork moves he was working on, because he was so meticulous with his drill work.
That lean back move he'd always do. He learned that one on me. He was doing me all the time. he tried to just gain a little space, and then he was just so fast. He couldn't shoot. Everything was down low. He couldn't shoot outside 15 feet. But he was just so quick. He had a great pump fake, and I'd never seen a guy that size with that explosion before. That was the thing that was so unreal. I mean, just unsupernatural to me, that I was a very good defender and very fast at about 235, 240, and physical with him and strong, but he could still power through and up and over me. And I just couldn't understand how it was possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just think that, God blessed him in ways he didn't bless anybody else.
And of course, I enjoy evaluating talent, and it's easier with the elite superstars, that 1%. But what amazed me about Mike was how explosive he was with his first step, but yet his second jump, if he would have how he would get back up again. And the fact that he was so competitive as a two-way player, and we're not going to say what you said in your book, 1A and 1B, but if you want to know Scott's assessment of LeBron and Michael, go pick up the book Through the Fire, because Scottie does a great job. Let's throw that teaser out there, Scottie, so people go out and get this book, because I thought you did a great job comparing Michael and LeBron. And I'm not going to say what you said, but I like how you broke it down and kind of told the differences in their competitive style, competitive nature, and competitive juices. Well done, brother. Well done.
Well, it's true. And like I say, in my assessment of it, I'm not slighting LeBron in any way. I have high regard for that young man, the way he has handled himself and been a face of the NBA for quite some time now. The flopping stuff kind of gets me a little bit, but from the standpoint of handling himself as a mega superstar, when the lights are on him the brightest, he doesn't shy away from any type of issues or controversy. He says what he feels he's passionate about and takes up causes that are dear to his heart. I'm very proud of everything that he's done for this game. I mean, just look at franchise values for an example. I mean, the way the NBA has soared. I remember when I first got in the league, the Miami Heat sold for about $144 million, and everybody was blown away at that number. And here we are, the Phoenix Suns, right, my hometown now, just sold for $4 billion a few months ago. So it is absolutely amazing what David Stern has done and how Adam Silver has done. But you got to give a lot of credit to these players. They are extremely talented, not necessarily saying I like the way that they play, the style of play that they play through 82 games, or most of them play about 65 or 70.
Yeah, load management, there's that word.
Sure. But the playoffs are here now, and I'm excited to see some 90s style basketball once again, except our Draymond Green. He's got to stop stepping on dudes.
I love it, Scottie. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we got Scott Williams here, author of the amazing book Through the Fire. We talked about that here at the beginning. We've got about 5-6 minutes here left and have really enjoyed the stories. Let's talk because of 15 years, let's give a shout, because it's easy to talk about superstars. Talk about some of those role players that you've been able to play with throughout the years that don't get enough mention for their hard work and dedication and their work ethic coming to practice day in and day out. Who were some of those guys with the multiple franchises that you played with that deserve their flowers?
Yeah, I often thought that I would one day do a series of something, and I don't know exactly what. I wasn't thinking about writing a book, but a series of something where, like myself, I consider myself an asset to the teams that I played for. And there were so many guys like me out there that I wish we would get a little bit recognition, even if someone like TNT or NBA TV did like a series of shows on different dudes, right? So one of the guys I always hated to go up against because he just worked so hard was PJ Brown.
Oh, PJ, yeah.
This dude just worked so hard, right? Offensive glass, dirty work, defense, set the picks, roll hard, take a hard foul, clean, but physical.
Oh, deceptively strong, right?
Yeah, Otis Thorpe, OT, another guy.
Yeah,
and you didn't want to see that game after you've had that fourth game in 5 nights, and you got to go out there and wrestle OT. There were no, I guess, the power forward spot back in the 90s. You couldn't be soft. If you got labeled soft, you had the entire power forward I guess, group would know about it. They'd be like, oh, we're out for blood against this dude. He didn't want any contact. He didn't want to box me off the offensive glass. You knew you were going to be in for a long night. So you had to be ready to perform every night. Aaron Williams, dude, playing New Jersey Nets, not talented offensively. Everybody was paying to come see Scott Williams and Aaron Williams play. But a dude that you knew you better be able to have your hard hat and lunch pail that night, or you were going to be embarrassed at the end of the evening.
You know what? Good stuff. And I like talking about that because as a coach, if we could have great strength, from our bench and get production from our bench, just like we're seeing in today's game, especially traveling on the road, who were those guys who were going to be dependable, reliable, and you knew what consistently you were going to get from them. Again, they don't get their flowers enough. And that's why I want to mention that, because there's so many guys out there who are great athletes and hard workers that just don't get enough shout outs or love that, we got to bring that to everybody's attention. So I love the fact that you mentioned, a handful of those guys who were great players.
Well, those are kind of guys that you never got headlines. When I always ask me who was the toughest guy you had to guard, Shaquille O'Neal is the biggest, strongest force in the NBA probably ever. I know Wilt Chamberlain did it when guys were all about 6'7", 6'8" still. But Keem Olajuwon probably the toughest guard. But the guy that gave me the biggest fits was Detlef Schrempf. He was a 3-4, not really a 4-5, what I was more accustomed to, and he just made me look silly out there on the floor. So, Detlef, I'd like to give you one more elbow if our paths ever cross again, to try to slow you down for all the times that you went around and finished over the top of me.
Because he was great coming off the dribble.
Great coming off the dribble, just shoot mid-range, outside, all the way out to the 3-point line. So you were at it. I was at his mercy. I couldn't do nothing with him. Derek McKee, another guy from some of those Pacers teams, same sort of thing. But you mentioned bench and how important it is to be able to rely on your bench. And I was watching the Suns game on Sunday here in Phoenix, and they got busted. The bench got busted up. They got outscored 36-10. They got out rebounded 17-9. And everyone always wants to talk about the offensive players, right? But I think it's the guys that know how to play their roles, that come off that bench in short minutes, especially on the road. The Clippers bench outplayed the Suns bench on the road. You don't see that very often. And if the Suns are going to come back and take control of this series, it's going to be that bench bunch that's going to need to do a better job of either leveling that output or exceeding it, because you can have KD, you can have Booker and CP3. They can go for 20 each, and KD can probably go for 33 to 35 tonight. But if you don't got that bench helping you out, you ain't going to get no victories in the NBA playoffs.
That's exactly right. And no better person to share that wisdom than yourself, being that guy coming off the bench for those Bulls runs, because, hey, if it wasn't for you guys, Phil Jackson's like, we got to figure something out. And he was able to depend on you guys, and you did it. Real quick, because this has been amazing. So many nuggets that you've shared. If you could share one word of wisdom or something that you've picked up in your illustrious career, what would that message be to a young player out there who just wants to make it? What message would Scott Williams, a 3-time NBA champion, tell that young man who's 14 or 15 years old, trying to make it, either going through some sort of adverse situation or going through some traumatic event? What message do you have for him, Scottie?
Well, there's so many one words that come to mind. Professionalism is a big one. Preparedness. But the biggest one is confidence.
Yeah.
And you gain confidence by putting in the work. I wasn't great at television when I first started. I was always a little nervous, but I did my homework. I knew everything about the other team. I did all the little nuggets that the play-by-play guys do, to be a good analyst. And I'm not going to be one of these guys that tells you usage rate and offensive efficiency, pro 36 minutes. That's not my thing. I will tell you what my eyes tell me how a guy is playing. and whether or not he has given me max effort, and whether or not I can look in his eyes and tell that he is confident because he has put in the work, he has prepared, he has shot the extra free throws after practice, he has got on the rebounding drills and been banged around in practice. He's ran the extra mile, so he's fresh down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And if you've done all that, you should have confidence. And if you haven't, that confidence is going to show up on the floor, and you will doubt yourself, and everybody will see it, from your teammates, your coaching staff, and the people that have their butts in the seats.
I love it, Scottie. If you see it, you say it, and show no fluff. That's why you are who you are, brother. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Scottie, hold that book up, Through the Fire. It's Scott Williams, and get out there and pick up this book. Support these causes, because I'm going to tell you what, he put his heart and soul, and there's a purpose to it. And Scottie, for that, I'm grateful, and I can't wait to get a copy myself so I can put it right here on my shelf. So every time a show comes on, people are going to see that over my shoulder and remind them that they need to get that for their library.
Coach, you just tell me the address for to send it. I'm going to send you a hardcover and a stand, so you got no excuses. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate the time to share something that's dear to my heart. Let's make a difference in domestic violence. You can find my book, Through the Fire, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. God bless you, brother. Hopefully we get a cross paths soon, because we got to go break bread together, because I love people that have a passion and a purpose, and you are that dude. You're him.
Thanks, Coach.
God bless you, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. Stay tuned for more great guests and great content. But I'll tell you what, Scottie Williams brought the juice today. God bless you, my friend.
Take care.